Tonight we're welcoming Jim Willis. Now, how would you describe Jim? Very broadly, I think. Surprisingly, he's or may not be surprised. He's an ordained minister. He was working as a minister for, I don't know, maybe was it 40 years or a long time.
Mhm.
A
Yeah.
retired professor, so an academic, lecturing in religion and spiritual matters, a musician, and a dowser. And I know a lot of you have rubbed shoulders with Jim, especially down at Devon Dowsers, and a prolific author um, with many books to his name. A new one come out recently, I believe, which I'll probably talk about, hopefully. But more profoundly, I think Jim would describe himself as a seeker of true spirituality. I hope I got that right.
Yes.
So now you might think that as a minister of the church, you already had that, but he had little time for the belief. But personally, he had a little time for belief and experiences outside the sort of materialistic world. So I think, he must have had quite a strong scientific bent at one point. But apparently 15 or so years ago, he underwent a great awakening. And I think this was brought on by learning to achieve out-of-body experiences. And this has taken him in a totally unexpected direction. And I think he would claim to have taken him to a greater and deeper spirituality, which now I think he spends his time, talking about and writing about. To help facilitate his search, though, he now lives in the woods, the deep woods in South Carolina, away from the hustle and bustle of life. And it was here, I understand it, he acquired his own spirit guide, which again he may mention later. But living in the woods has not completely severed his links with the world. He must still have a cursed Wi-Fi signal feeding that damn technology, which I'm sure is a constant distraction for him. So, but tonight, that's our gain, ladies and gentlemen, because he can talk to us from far away about, and the title is the Science of Spirit Guides. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Jim. Well, I will just say, sorry, I better mention, Jim's very happy to take questions, but could we write them in the chat, and we'll deal with the questions at the end. We can probably open up the mic then. Okay, thank you very much, Jim, and over to you.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. Boy, what a wonderful introduction. You make me sound interesting, Nick. I appreciate that. Oh, before we get to the presentation itself, I just like to tell you a little about who I am so you'll have an idea of where this is coming from. When we're talking about spirit guides, it's very easy to kind of go off in different directions, and it's good to know the source. I retired from active Christian ministry 16 years ago after 40 years as a minister and as a college professor teaching not only world religions and cross-cultural spirituality, but also instrumental music, lower brass, and that kind of thing. And I was a part-time carpenter and all this kind of thing. And you know how our lives just get so busy sometimes, and it's very easy for us to get sidetracked. And somehow that happened. When I was young in my 20s, and I just got out of school, and I was starting all, ready to take on the world and all that kind of thing. I knew all the answers, as so many of us did when we were in our 20s. Now we don't even know really what all the questions are, but uh, I had this vision somehow. I knew it didn't make any sense, but I had this vision of somehow, uh, joining a religious, spiritual community, and we would get together and we would grow together and learn more about the deeper meanings of life and all that. And then I soon discovered, uh, when you become the pastor of a church, it doesn't work that way. Um, the when you're a pastor of a church, basically what you are is CEO of a small company. and you have to sit here and worry about things like budgets and buildings and growth and the next meeting and the next church service and the next this and the next that, and you have to be a part-time psychologist and visit people, and life just goes by. And all of a sudden, at the ripe old age of 62, which was really a little young to retire, it occurred to me that I hadn't accomplished the one thing that I wanted to accomplish, and that's to really experience these things personally that I was talking about. Oh, sure, there were times in prayer or in music or something like that when I would have that a sense of something bigger than myself and reaching out, and it was wonderful. It was great, but it was just moments here and there. So when I retired at the age of 62, I said, "There, that's it. I'm going to go out to the woods." And my plan was to come out to the woods of South Carolina, build a road out through the middle of the woods. I'm surrounded by, oh, I don't know how many miles of the Sumter National Forest here in the southeast of America, of the United States. And when I was coming out here, the idea was to stay for 1 year and go on a kind of a retreat, a spiritual retreat. And I wanted to confront God. I wanted to confront spirit. I wanted to confront the essential reality of who we are. And I wanted to live it. I just didn't want to talk about it or know about it in an academic, mental kind of sense. So I came out here for 1 year, and that was 16 years ago. And I'm still here, still learning, still growing. And I had a prayer really in my mind. I had a Bible verse that was in my mind that said, okay, God, I'm going out to confront reality. I'm going out to confront spirit. It's you and me, God. No holds barred, 24 hours a day. And let's see what you got. I had that verse in my mind that Jacob said of old when he wrestled with God, I will not let you go until you bless me. And it was quite a confrontation. Little did I know that that verse was not something that I just made up. It came to me, and I didn't even realize it was really given to me, because after I lived out here thinking about that verse all the time, God, I will not let you go until you bless me. I had a chance to go to Cornwall a number of years ago, and there I spoke to a group in the parallel community that Hamish Miller, who was a kind of a mentor of mine, who I never met, but I still call him a mentor. Um, I presented a talk there and had a wonderful time. Met some great people. I hope some of them are here in the audience tonight. But when I finished, there was one call I had to make. I couldn't leave England without going up to a little town called Fenny Compton, up northwest of London. So I learned how to drive on what to me felt like the wrong side of the street, and I met my first English turnabout, or roundabout, I guess it's called, or whatever. And through many perils, I managed to make it up to Fenny Compton, and I was able to meet a historian from the town there who took me into the church where my ancestors, my great, 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 I don't know how many greats ago it was, used to preach. And I was able to go up into the pulpit and stand in that pulpit where my ancestor preached. And from that pulpit, I could look over and see this one stained glass window that he must have looked at a lot. I've never seen this in stained glass before, but it was a picture of Jacob wrestling with God, basically saying, I will not let you go until you bless me. Now, how those spiritual DNA can be passed on down through the generations and influence me so much. But when I came back, it was just a whole different feeling. I had the feeling that somebody was watching over me. And it was a very comforting feeling. And lo and behold, my prayer was answered. I got to know Spirit, but not in a way that I expected. It didn't come through traditional Christianity. I guess that just plain wouldn't have worked. But instead, it came to me through probably the world's oldest religion, the idea of shamanism and doing out-of-body trips and getting to know the reality outside of this reality, about which we'll have more to say in just a very few minutes. But anyway, along the turn of that, I somehow learned to start dowsing. Now, I had never been a dowser. I didn't. I had watched people douse for water, and when I had a well come back here and everything else, I had people, coming back, and one of the guys got out some dowsing rods and said, "Yeah, this is where we'll put it." And I didn't know anything about dowsing, so I just kind of taught myself. I'm out here without any access to teachers, really, except what you can have on, the internet or something like that. So basically, I started dowsing for water and struck out totally. Could not find anything. Even when I walked over the place where I knew the water line ran from my well to the house, and I didn't get anything. So I did what we all did. I went online and did some research, and I discovered something called earth energy. And I said, well, that sounds like more my line right now. And so I decided to start dowsing for earth energy. And right out in front of my house, in my front yard, I took the step that probably changed my life forever. 1 minute, nothing while I was concentrating on earth energy. The next minute, the rods crossed, and all of us who are dowsers know that first wonderful moment when the rods cross and we realize we're not doing anything, and we're just shocked, and we're absolutely positive that we're the first people in the world to ever discover this. And so there we are. And lo and behold, I discovered that I had built my house right on an energy line, an energy lay that runs all the way across the country, right? And from where I am all the way up to the big wheel, the medicine wheel in Montana, and going through all kinds of Indian special holy places and Indian encampments and mound builders and all of this kind of thing, all of these sacred sites. I've dowsed this thing out for miles and gone all the way across the country. And sometimes it takes a little looking, but sure enough, I've been able to find it, the same energy line that runs right through my house. So I have no doubt that I was brought here, but brought here by who? And that brings us to the idea of spirit guides. I didn't really understand anything about spirit guides. I didn't know. I had read a whole bunch of stuff about it, but that was about it. And I began to have these what turned into three-way conversations. I would be dowsing for this or dowsing for that, and I felt the presence of something else. And lo and behold, that was when I discovered my own spirit guide, who I have since given the name of Sabuko for reasons I won't get into. But at any rate, one day I didn't understand how this was going to work, and the other day, at time it has worked. And so for now, well, more than 12, 13, 14 years, I have been involved in conversations just about daily with dowsing rods and contacting my spirit guide, and sometimes just talking. It's kind of hard because all he can do is say yes or no with rods. But on the other hand, I've noticed something that I almost am ashamed to say as a minister. For 40 years as a minister, there were times when I was deep in faith, and sometimes my faith would just fail me, and I would feel all alone, totally alone. But I can say that since I started dowsing for the presence of this spirit guide, I have never, ever had a time when I was disappointed. And it taught me that there is so much more to life. And I wanted to share this message because in this hectic, busy, loud world in which we live, I think if people knew that they were really not alone, and I mean really know it, not just kind of believe it as a faith statement, but really know it. If people knew that, then I think it would change the way we live. With that as a kind of an introduction, then, uh, let's go to my official presentation, The Science of Spirit Guides, and we'll see if I can bring it up here. There we go. I think you can all see it now. When we are talking now in the next
Hi,
the
Jim.
next minutes,
I don't
Fred,
think. Have you shared the screen?
can you see it now?
No, I don't think so. No.
Oh, you can't see it.
Right. What we'll do, I'll just take you off the. You can just take you off the spotlight.
Oh, wait a minute. I bet I know why you can't see it. I'm going to have to there. Now I think you can probably see it.
No.
Still no.
Can you see it?
It says
Oh, sorry.
You are screen sharing?
There we are, yeah.
I can see
Oh,
it.
I can
okay.
see it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
No-
Good.
no problem.
I missed one little thing that I was supposed to do. So I think now I'm all set at any rate. We're going to be talking about the science of spirit guides. And the reason I call it the science of spirit guides is because the subject of spirit guides is a sensitive subject. To be honest, there's a lot of fake information out there. And when I say fake information, I don't mean the people who are bringing the information are fake at all. They've had these experiences and they want to share them, but it's a very individual kind of thing. And to my way of thinking, it's important that if spirit guides are real, then they are subject to verification. Now, not necessarily through our materialistic scientific methods, but there is a bona fide science behind our connection with spirit guides in other dimensions. It may be a science that we don't understand yet, but it's there. And quantum physics is teaching us a lot in this regard. It's proven that things such as, entanglement, for instance, which makes no sense at all. You can take two particles that are a whole universe apart and put a clockwise spin on one and the other one, which is with which it is entangled, all of a sudden will start going counterclockwise. I mean, they are connected instantly. Now that shouldn't be, according to Albert Einstein. They shouldn't be. Nothing should be able to travel faster than the speed of light, and yet these probably are. We can go into other, I mean, how can a particle be both a particle and a wave at the same time? So what we're going to be trying to do tonight is present a possible way to understand the idea of help from outside our own materialistic physical world. And then we're going to try to present a way through dowsing of contacting that help. And if we can do that, we will have accomplished our goals. I have to say right off the bat that I want to make sure that people realize I'm not going to be talking about the way. I'm not saying this is the way you do it. All I can say is it works for me, and I found it helped. And so I hope it'll work for everyone else as well. This is going to be our objective then, and this is what we hope to accomplish tonight. We want to bring the reality of a spirit guide connection into the age of multi-dimensions and the possibility of discerning them through dowsing. Now, that is a loaded question, and it's a huge topic. Can we really depend upon the idea of spirit guides and the fact that they are real entities who just simply exist in other dimensions that are probably closer to us than we can possibly imagine, but shut off from us because we experience the world through our five senses. I call it this world, materialistic world, I call it our perception realm. And the reason I like to call it a perception realm is because we perceive it through the five senses. We are surrounded, so to speak, in this body by this five-fold fence of touch and taste and smelling and hearing and the five senses that through which we interact with the world. Now, what we want to do is kind of sit up and peek over that fence and see what's on the other side a little bit. That's where we want to try to go tonight and realize that this is an actual thing that can be done and that dowsing is one way to open up these kinds of doors. Now, let's get into the theory of it first, the intellectual theory. You can tell here's the academic coming out. Before we get into the practice of it, we'll talk about the theory itself. I love this quote from Hank Wesselman in Vision Seeker. He says, the master game involves the quest for spiritual awakening, enlightenment, and liberation. Isn't that something that the world needs today? With all of the things going on between countries and all of the wars and the rumors of wars and the pollution and the fighting and the division and everything else, we are desperate in need of spiritual awakening, of spiritual enlightenment and liberation. Now, the goal is to discover one's own true nature and to know from direct empirical experience that this nature, our true nature, is both sacred and immortal, and it is already here within us, every single one of us. To do that and to enter into this conversation, we'll have to ask some questions. First of all, they're what if questions, pretty much. What if someone were to tell you that your five senses, which have evolved to help you interact with the world around you, also serve as filters that cut you off from the total experience, the totality of reality? This fivefold fence of our five senses that surrounds us, it's a wonderful thing. Were it not for that, we wouldn't have no way of really interacting with the world. But that's how we do it. And so we get so used to it, we get the idea of saying that's the only way there is, through the five senses. And that's what our scientific community would tell us, that it has to be something that you can see, something you can taste or touch, put under a microscope, study, repeat, have peer reviews, and all this kind of thing. And all of that is absolutely true. But on the other hand, it also serves as a filter that cuts us off from the totality of reality. And maybe that's good, because quite frankly, if it wasn't for that filter, we would be inundated with so much information we probably couldn't handle. Our brains just simply couldn't process it. So what if that person who asked you the first question were to further explain that the scientific method, which is a marvelous systematic investigative technique, that relentlessly explores, tracks down, measures, and describes the world around us. What if it is insufficient to fully explain the nature of the cosmic ocean in which we live, because so much of that cosmic ocean is indeed beyond the material life, the perception life that the scientific method was invented to examine? In other words, how can we go into the intuitive? The scientific method, for instance, it can't explore certain things that are, how do you take love and put it under a microscope? You can look and see what it does, but how do you describe what it is? That kind of thing. So we go even farther. What if you were to learn that almost everything you have been taught about reality is an illusion? And I didn't make that up. That came directly from Albert Einstein. Now, if Albert Einstein thought that was true, it says something that's very profound, I would think. So what if it were to be proven true then, that consciousness is not a byproduct of our brains, but rather it's an organizer. It doesn't produce consciousness. It's more like a radio than a generator. Now, consciousness is really being studied all over by many different disciplines today. And it's a tremendous form of argument. There's a lot of dissension. There are a lot of people who are absolutely positive that consciousness comes about because there are neurons in our brain that fire off, and electronic impulses that kick off chemical reactions and endorphins and all that kind of thing. And that consciousness arises, it emerges out of reality. What I want to say is maybe it's just the opposite. Maybe reality emerges out of consciousness, not the other way around. In that sense, our brains are more like uh, it's like a radio or a television. Any of you who are old enough to remember the old black and white televisions, you know, we had the black and white television, little rabbit ears on top, and we used to try to get better reception, and we would hold the rabbit ears up and we would turn them around this way and that, and the picture would get better and worse and all that kind of thing. And what that was telling us, uh, the antenna that we were holding in our hands was really like a dowsing rod. It was experiencing things that we weren't aware of, but we're in the room. There are television waves going all the way through the room. We just didn't realize it until we held up this dowsing rod of an antenna. And then by moving it, we would see that those waves are going through this room all the time. Of course we can see them. Well, that's what basically our brains do with consciousness, I think. Consciousness is an organizer, not a producer. I mean, our brains are an organizer, not a producer of consciousness. Our brains are more like a radio than a generator. So we continue down this line of thought, and we understand that what is this personal essence of who we are that refers to my brain, my body, my foot, you know? Is there an essential organ or structure that is indispensable to the I who says my? Who is that I that has all of these things? That I is the basic essence of who we are. Now, we used to say that the I was located in the heart, but then we learned how to keep people alive with artificial hearts. So we said, well, the I lives in the brain, but then we learned how to keep people alive even after they were pronounced brain dead. Some religions call it a soul, but I still have trouble with that, because we can say my soul, I have a soul. Who is this I that has a soul? I think the Hindu rishis were way ahead of us on this one. 6,000 years ago, they were dealing with this when they came up with the idea of Brahman and Atman. Now, Brahman is the indescribable reality of, we might call it God, I suppose. But the Hindus were very careful to notice that you cannot describe Brahman. Once you build a box and say a definition box, this is what Brahman is, you've missed it. I'll never forget that when I first taught this at the college level, I wanted to make sure I got it right. So I had a good friend of mine who used to have this little shop, and he was, he practiced Hinduism, and he had a little altar, and every day he would light his candles. And he was just a beautiful guy. And I wanted to make sure I got it right. So I said, I'm going to be explaining Brahman to my class today. And he said, oh, very difficult, very difficult. And I said, well, here's what I'm going to say. And I gave him my lecture. And he sat there and listened to the whole lecture, and he smiled. And at the very end, I said, Nair, do I have it right? And he nodded his head and said, no. And I knew right away, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. You can't describe Brahman. Words just don't do it. But they also talked about Brahman being connected with the word Atman. Now, we sometimes translate that word in English as meaning soul, but that really isn't it. Atman is the Brahman within. And what happens is that the great Hindu rishis recognize the essential truth that thou art that. Atman is Brahman, but Brahman is exterior to us, so to speak, is the immanent. But Atman is the one who was within, and they are one and the same. What they were saying is, in this sense, you are God. And I can't help but think, I said, boy, that doesn't going to go along with the Bible. And then I realized both in the Old and the New Testaments, there it is. What? Know ye not that ye are gods? It's right there in the early Christians, the early Jews had it. They had the idea, they understood that there is that within us, which is Atman, which is really Brahman itself. And so that is really the essential oneness, the essential unity, the essential point of who we are. And more it becomes obvious that the entity we call I is only temporarily in these material bodies. And from time to time, it escapes its confines. And it does it through a variety of activities. Sometimes they're dreams, sometimes out-of-body experiences, sometimes near-death experiences. And most important, we can contact it, I'm absolutely sure now, through a dowsing. It's a really, really important thing for us all to know. So let's take this idea and try to summarize it. And this is probably one of the most important things I can hope that we can all leave tonight with. Quantum reality states that the very particles that make up our bodies exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. In other words, we are here, Atman, but we are also there, Brahman, at the same time. And the trick is to try to understand this enough and to try to work with this enough that through things like meditation and through dowsing and through dreams, we can understand that we are not just here in this body, but we are at the same time there. The quantum physicists would say we are entangled. If we're entangled at the quantum level, then why can't we be entangled at the macro level, so to speak? We are entangled with multiple dimensions. What that means, and this is wild, but what that means is, in effect, we are the spirit guide who we seek to contact. The spirit guide. I used to wonder why, the spirit guides, what they do is hang around all day waiting for us to call on them or, look at us. And they're always watching us. They got nothing better to do than to watch what I'm doing. I always had trouble with that. And why are they always there? And how are they, getting along? But when I began to see that the spirit guide is always available to us because the spirit guide is us on the other side, that being that I contacted with my dowsing rods that I called Sabuko is really the me that's on the other side of the perception fence. Well, when we douse for our spirit guide, then we are not seeking direction from some being in another dimension. We are dowsing our own material bodies, which are aware of all of this, but below the normal level of consciousness. Now, what this is so important for dowsing is this. Everybody knows the first point of dowsing is you've got to be totally immersed in what you're dowsing for. If you're dowsing for water, if you're looking for well water, and you want to know how deep it is, if you're thinking about what you're having for dinner, you're not going to find any water. I got a real kick out of this the other day. A person up the road from me, some distance up the road, had put in a water line that goes out to the main road. Where I was on well water, he was on his own line. So as a result, years ago, he ran his water line right along the road. Well, when I came out here and living out in the middle of the woods, having a good time all by myself, one day they decided they were going to pave the road as a kind of a favor to me, I guess. We'll pave the road. You don't do it for me, but they did. And in paving the road, of course, they had to meet new guidelines. And so they decided what they would do is enlarge it a little bit at the same time. But they didn't know where my neighbor's water line was, and they had to find it. So they came out here with their big truck, and they were all the engineers. They had all electronic equipment, and they had all this kind of stuff. And these were experts, and they were going to find this water line. So I walked out with my dowsing rods, and I said, I've got my dowsing rods. You want me to try to find the water line for you? And this guy, loaded with all of the scientific equipment, I don't know how many taxpayers' dollars went into all of his stuff. He said, nah, never mind. I'll get my dowsing rods. And he went into the truck, got his dowsing rods, came out, and within a matter of 2 or 3 minutes between the two of us, we had found the water line and marked it so they wouldn't, cut it up when they made the road larger. I often wonder why did we buy all of that expensive equipment when the guy was carrying dowsing rods behind the driver's seat of his car? That's all he needed. But at any rate, when we douse for water, we've got to be thinking about water. When we douse for uh, uh, earth energies, we've got to be thinking about earth energies. We've got to be totally immersed in it. If we're thinking about anything else, we're probably not going to have very good luck. Now, reason I bring all this up is often when we start thinking about dowsing for spirit guides, we start thinking about dowsing a foreign landscape on the other side of our perception fence, because that's where the spirit guide lives. Well, in one sense, that's true, but in another sense, that's really not what we're doing. You see, our bodies, the essence of our bodies, are entangled with this spirit guide because he is us on the other side. So when we douse, we shouldn't necessarily be thinking about a foreign landscape and a foreign entity and a foreign being. What we should really be thinking about is, what are our bodies experiencing? In other words, we're dowsing our own bodies, our own nature, because our bodies are experiencing this. If we go back to the television analogy we used before, those television waves that were going through the room, they were going right through our bodies. Our bodies knew what they were. Our bodies recognized it. And so what in that sense, all of these, the essence of who we are and the wisdom we get from our spirit guides, all of that is going through our bodies, and our bodies are aware of it. The problem is we have just lost touch, which I think, quite frankly, the ancients were much better at this than us. We have lost a lot of touch with understanding what we are really feeling in our bodies. And so when we're dowsing for our spirit guide, the number one rule is to remember that that spirit guide is, in essence, us on the other side. And we experience that in our bodies, the very cells of our bodies. So that's where our real interest has to be. That's where our minds have to be focused. What is my body experiencing? And how do I get that from my body up to my brain so that I can understand it? Let me try to explain this if I can in a part. This is a diagram that helps me. Like I say, I'm not saying it's entirely right. As a matter of fact, when I first came up with this idea, I doused it and I was asking my spirit guide, is this true? And the rods went, kind of. I think it's as true as we can get with our language. Our language is so short, but it's just to describe things on this side. And so this may not be the essence, but it helps me, and so I share it with you. Maybe it can help you too. Picture this triangle as a piece of pie, for instance, that goes around in a big circle. So the point at the top of the triangle is really the center of that pie. It's the still point of the circle. It's where perfect peace, perfect harmony, perfect joy, perfect contentment is. I call it the source. I used to call it God, and I really don't have any trouble with the word God myself, but the word God has so much baggage and so many people have different definitions of it that when I say God, some people may think I'm meaning what they understand God to be. And in reality, no, maybe not. So I like to use the word source. You can use any other word. You can use Brahman if you want. You can use the word ground of being, anything like that. But I'm comfortable with the word source. It's the place where we come from and the place we go. Now think about what that's like in the source. Here we are, perfect unity, perfect oneness, perfect togetherness. There is no ego. There is no individuality. It's just that sense of contentment. And yet there's something we can't get there. We can't get experience there. When you're in perfect unity, how can you have individual experience? So in that sense, if the source is going to grow, it has to leave itself and come out to a different environment where it can experience individual growth and have individual experiences. So I think every one of us makes a very courageous decision at some point. Leave the source and begin to journey outward. Leave the sense of perfect unity and perfect contentment A lot of times when people have near-death experiences, that's the one thing they talk about, how wonderful it is there. They feel perfectly loved, perfectly welcome, perfectly, because they're back into source again. And that's where we all long to go home for that. And so many of the things we want to experience, friendship and marriage and all the rest of that stuff that has to do with unity. I think the early Jewish writers had this idea when they wrote the book of Genesis, and they talked about the expulsion from the garden, and what happened. Well, Adam and Eve, it's the myth goes, were one with each other, one with God, one with their environment. But in order to grow, they had to leave, and so they were kicked out of the garden. They went to the tree of good and evil, the tree of uh, d- differing, good and bad and up and down, the tree of dichotomy and all that kind of thing. And I think that's where our growth begins, really. So, okay, we're there in the source and we've decided to come out. We enter into what I like to call the first dimension outside the source. I call it consciousness. Both Stephen Hawking and Albert Einstein called it the mind of God, but we've already talked about consciousness, so we'll kind of go on from there. But there in consciousness, we're not individuals yet, but we're beginning to get an idea of moving outward and moving into something, a new reality. But we can't stay in the idea of consciousness forever, in the mind of God forever. So we go through the first field. These two different fields, this one and the next one are going to get in a minute, are fields that separate dimensions. The first dimension is consciousness. The first field is what we call the Akashic field. Irvin Laszlo likes to use this term. It was coined from early Hindu Sanskrit. We go through the Akashic field. The Akashic field is the place of possibilities and probabilities. And everything in the Akashic field will someday be experienced. Every possibility will be realized. Every probability will be realized. But as we go through that Akashic field, we come now to the next dimension, which is the dimension recently discovered by the physicists of quantum reality, the dimension of thoughts and intuition. Now, I say recently discovered. All they did, I think, was discover something that the ancient rishis and dowsers have known for thousands and thousands of years, but they've discovered it through mathematics rather than through intuition. But there in quantum reality, the idea of thoughts and intuition, everything is possible. The best way to understand this, I think, Socrates, or Plato rather, talked about horse and horseness. In quantum reality, there are no horses. Those are manifestations, but there is horseness, the idea of what a horse is. So how do you get from quantum reality, the idea of horseness or humanness, how do you get from there out to where we are? Well, you have to go through the newly discovered Higgs field. The Higgs field, if you get physicists together and try to ask them to explain the Higgs field, they say, well, it takes on it's where energy takes on mass. It slows down and takes on mass. Over here in America, the physicists used to like to refer to the Higgs field as more like molasses. I understand that in the UK, they like to use the word treacle. But to be honest, I'm not quite sure what treacle is. But anyway, it's that field that slows down enough to where when we get through to the other side, lo and behold, what are we? We're material reality manifested. We're living out here in our own perception realm. We have become human. And out here, we are going through experiences of individual experiences. And the only way we can accomplish individual experiences is to be an individual, is to be with ego, to be able to say I. And out here, that's what we do. Now, I find this tremendously exciting because what it tells me is even when life is difficult, even when sickness strikes, or we have to deal with relationship problems, or we have to deal with technical problems, or we have to deal with sickness and all this kind of stuff, even when that is happening and life is not good, in a sense, it is good because we volunteered for it. You can't come out here and just have good things happen and everything is fine, everything is hunky-dory, and that's it. No, you can't do that. You have to experience both. That's what individual experience is. And those are the experiences we take with us back to the source when we die. Now, having said all that, let's approach this in two different ways. Well, the first one I'll call the intellectual approach. That's the one I would probably use for my whole life. Irving Laszlo and the Akashic field and integral theory of everything describes this beautifully. It's a way of intellectualizing everything we've been saying. And I've been talking in a very, I suppose, intellectual kind of way. I've been using words to try to say things that are probably much easier to understand without them. But at any rate, there are different scientists who have approached this idea of intellectualizing what we've just been talking about. Hugh Everett back in 1957 had the idea of many worlds, of collapsing quantum possibilities. Hugh Everett was laughed out of the field. He was blackballed. He couldn't get a job in physics. He couldn't get a job teaching. He couldn't get any money. He had to go work for the government. And he died thinking he was an absolute failure. And now scientists are saying Hugh Everett was one of the greatest physicists who ever lived, but I wish they could have told him that when he was still alive. His whole idea of collapsing quantum possibilities was everything that can happen will happen in this dimension or in another one. There are many worlds. In this dimension, we can flip a coin and it comes up heads and we say, oh, it came up heads. There, that's it. That's pretty clear. What we don't realize, one dimension over from us, our doppelganger, us on the other side, might be flipping a coin and it comes up tails. And he says, well, it came up tails. And because that's all he can accept, and we're sure that we're right, and he's sure that he's right, and we're both right. It's just that we live in two different dimensions where possibilities exist. Now, Stephen Hawking and Thomas Herzog came up with another idea, the observer created universe, the idea that the universe is created by us. You have to have an observer for anything to happen. If the old story of if a tree falls in the forest, and is there any sound if nobody's out there? Well, now Stephen Hawking and Thomas Herzog say not only if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, maybe there was no tree in the first place. So the whole idea of the observer created universe, and we find this in the Bible too. We find the idea of God creating the heaven and the earth in Genesis chapter 1. And how did he do it? He saw that it was good. He observed it. And so what we have is this observer created universe. Another way of looking at it was John Maldaceno's holographic universe. We are living in a hologram, and the idea is that we just don't realize it, but the pixels that make up our body are there in the holograph, just kind of like, beam me up, Scotty, on the Star Trek kind of thing. We can go on, but basically the basic idea of this whole thing is that information cannot escape a closed system. Information is available, all of it. We just need to know how to influence it, how to find it. Our bodies are aware of it. They sense it because it's going through them, and our bodies are very entangled in everything. We just need to know how. I think dowsing is the idea. Dowsing will tell us. As yet, we may not know how, but dowsing will tell us how. And that's why we finally get to the intuitive, the dowsing approach. And everybody's going to develop their own approach. This is the one that I use as a dowser, and I hope it'll help. I call it my six-fold dowsing method that I employ when I dowse. Number one, it really important, decide what you want to know. So many times we're confused. And so we try to dowse. And when you try to dowse with a confused mind, it's very difficult. We're just not ever really quite zeroed in and confident. And so we have to know what it is. We have to decide what it is we want to know. What exactly am I trying to accomplish here? And we have to remember, and this is extremely important, we are seeking answers that our bodies already recognize, the wisdom of our own body, already intuit. We're not looking to some foreign entity in a mystical landscape. that the answers are already here. We're seeking to get them from the cell level that our bodies are entangled with up to the brain level, so that we can get at least a rough idea in our brains of how to explain what we've seen. And this is difficult to do. Have you ever had a dream where you tried to wake up and then try to explain the dream, and the dream was so vivid, and then when you try to explain it, it sounds silly? That kind of thing. That's a very difficult thing. So we are trying to douse our own bodies because our own bodies somehow intuit things that our brains just don't always catch up with. That's why we have to ask very specific yes or no questions. I've had so many people say, oh, if dowsing can tell you anything, why don't you ask her what's the stock market's going to do tomorrow? Or, if dowsing can do anything, why don't you ask whether the coin is going to come up heads or tails? And the answer is simple. In one universe, it's going to come up heads. In another, it's going to come up tails. Which do you want to know? You have to be very, very specific here. Otherwise, dowsing can lead you down a primrose path very easily, because we are trying to use it to do something which it simply cannot do. So the yes or no questions are extremely important. Then, and here's the hard part, especially when you're confused, when you have questions, when you're wondering, when you don't know what's going to happen, as much as possible, we simply have to try to keep our thoughts relaxed and open and centered totally on our own bodies. We are asking our bodies to reveal something to us through our dowsing implements that our brains simply don't understand yet. Very important here too. Do not anticipate. I come to this. I come to the idea of, I'm going to ask a yes or no question and I already know what the answer is. Well, not necessarily. So we simply can't anticipate. We have to wait and see. We are probably very good at fooling ourselves. We may even be very good, some of us, at moving the rods with our hands when we don't even know we're doing it. And the important thing is to not anticipate what the answer is going to be, but let it come. And then when the answer does come, trust it. But of course, verify as much as possible. One of the wonderful things I love about dowsing is when I'm getting answers that I have to look up to make sure that they're right, because I wasn't expecting it at all. Sometimes when I try to douse something and I'm absolutely sure what the answer is, and then the rods just sit there and they don't do anything. And all of a sudden I realize I'm being told something that's so much more important. And I just wasn't, I was anticipating. And then I verify it by trying to relax, going back to the beginning again. And now all of a sudden, new possibilities open up. Wonderful when that happens. So the summary of all this then, our dowsing tools reveal what our bodies already know, but which our brains, which are subject to the five senses, have not yet understood. Now, that's probably the one thing. If you're going to take one thing from this whole thing, I hope that's probably what it is. Our dowsing tools reveal what our bodies already know, but which our brains, according to the five, following the five senses, they're subject to the five senses, they have not yet understood. So when we put it all together, yes, everything around us is real, but notice the small r. It's not reality. Notice the capital R. What we call real is the universe that exists within our perception fence, that is subject to our perceptions, our five senses. That's what we call real. But what we call real is only one small cosmos in a much larger reality. We look at reality with a capital R when we look over the fence and we're able to see through our dowsing rods or through other ideas what is really out there. And then we see the reality of it all. And I think that OBEs, out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, dreams are an important source of spirit, visions, dowsing, they all seek to pitch us out. How? By focusing inward, because inward we're in touch with these things. I think it's really important for us to remember that I think thousands of years ago, our ancestors who lived in a totally different world than us, much different world, much quieter, much more contemplative. I think they were aware of these things intuitively, that somehow in this, hectic intellectual world in which we live, we just have forgotten. The ability is atrophied within us. And that's why I think dowsing can bring that ability back. And it's important because I think it is very probable that right now the human race on our planet stands at a threshold, a crossroad. I think if we don't learn this stuff, we either move out into that reality or quite possibly we destroy the reality that we now inhabit. And notice the capital R, we either move out into that reality or quite possibly we can destroy the small r reality that we now inhabit. We play with dangerous toys, and I don't know if we can handle them yet. And I think our very existence depends on being able to understand that that greater reality is calling us. That's why I think dowsers can lead the way, and we must lead the way, I think, into the new, old reality with a capital R. Well, put it all together. I have used some of these ideas in my new book, which just came out on April 9th, called Near-Death Experiences. I've also have written another book on out-of-body experiences called The Akashic Field. To find out anything more about these books, or if you're interested at all, if you go to my website, www.jimwillis.net, all the books are there, and all I do is click on them, and it'll take you to a place where you can get them in either printed form or digital form, or in some cases, audio form. I have a Facebook page, but the YouTube page, the one down at the bottom, youtube.com, see Jim Willis. I have a number of dowsing videos up on that YouTube page, and I hope I can share those with you. What I would really hope is that if you do go to that webpage, jimwillis.net, there's a contact page. Please feel free to contact me. You can send me an email through the contact page. You and I can talk like this, and I can even see some pictures up on my screen of some of the people who are here. But it is just really nice to be in contact, because we are in a community that is all over the world, and I would love to share in that community. Okay, that takes us away, so I'm going to stop sharing this, and I think now I can bring up, well, there. There I am. Oh, okay.
Thanks, Jim. I'm here.
Any questions? I'd be glad to share, or anything you have to share. Questions or not, feel free.
Thank you for your talk. And you're your own worst enemy, aren't you? You're encouraging people to to contact you so that it gives you peace and quiet.
I've never gotten used to that. I came out here to the woods to get away from it all. And whereas I used to speak in a college classroom or a church where maybe you could have 100 people there, and now a new book comes out and I can do a podcast and talk to many hundreds of people at the same time. And here I am in the middle of the woods to get away from all that, and I'm doing it. But it makes me feel good, because it puts me in touch with the contact of the community that I would never have a chance to meet otherwise.
Yeah. I think just my understanding of your work is that you're very much about, it's very much about experience as the path to greater spirituality, isn't actually really being there. And I think you didn't touch much on the OBEs, did you? The out-of-body experiences, but I know that's, if you go to the YouTube channel, you'll find more information there, which is worth listening to. On that subject, just a couple of questions I see in the chat, which I think is related to that. One from Mary, and another one. It was to do with. Let's see now. Where are we? I mean, she's asking whether you're using mind-altering drugs, or what's the other one? And from Jackie Garside. Ayahuasca. Do you ever do you ever indulge in those sort of things?
I never have. I
No.
never have. And it's not that I'm against it. I've had some very good friends who have had wonderful insights through using ayahuasca, and I've read all of Graham Hancock's books on his use of ayahuasca. It's not that I'm against it. It's just that it never been right for me, so I just have never done it.
Okay. I noticed that Caroline's got her hand up. So if I ask Caroline to unmute, maybe she could. Caroline, would you like to put your question?
I'm trying to unmute.
There.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I was just intrigued by the fact you said dowsing is about yes or no, whereas our dowsing is about show me.
That's I like that. Yeah, show me the water, show me the energy line, show me the
show me, show me yes or no, but show me with great respect, and also well, I was a bit surprised because I'm quite a newbie really, but
to be honest, I'm a bit surprised now that you bring it up, because when I listen to YouTube, for instance, of Hamish Miller, who has taught me so much, and he always says, show me. And somehow I don't do that. I say, am I in the energy line, or is this the inner? I thank you for bringing that up. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be employing that a lot more in the future now. Thank you.
Right. Well, yeah, because they show you all sorts of interesting things.
Yes. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good luck. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Fine. Okay, good.
I see Mary's got a hand up. Mary, sorry. Yes. Would you like
Thank you. Thank you for your answer about the mind-altering drugs. I have had experiences myself, which I won't bore everybody with, but you can talk to me another time if you like, which I found were life-altering. That's fine. I was dowsing along as you were talking, Jim, and my dowsing affirmed everything that you said.
Wonderful.
Not that you need to take much notice of what I say, but I describe myself as a Christian universalist in that I see a common thread. But I think there's so much cobblers. Pardon me, there's loads of cobblers in the Bible, including that you should put divinators to death. But if everybody in the Bible was put to death, there'd be nobody left, because the last group of people to be put to death are people who kill other people. So that kind of mutually assured annihilation, which we really don't want to go there, do we? What am I trying to say? I'm aware of entities, stroke people with me sometimes when I'm dowsing. And I don't think these are products of my imagination, but they may be. Maybe everything's a product of my imagination. There are lots of Buddhist philosophers who'd say that everything that we perceive is emanating from our own mind and the karmic imprints of it. But in my experience, and I haven't extensively questioned this until now, I am aware of several beings who stand with me when I'm dowsing, and sometimes they directly tell me things that I haven't been asking. So then something will come into my field of knowledge just for them. So what's your experience with that?
It's funny that you should mention this. I think you are absolutely right on. I think you are seeing beings like that. And one of the reasons I'm so sure is in my new book, Near-Death Experiences, one of the things, and I'm doing all kinds of podcasts and interviews because it just came out. And one of the things I find myself saying over and over again is, as a younger minister, and over the last 40 years, I was at the bedside of a lot of people who died and were flatlined and who came back, or who just before they died, even if they didn't come back, they would express the idea that they were seeing beings in the room. And when I was younger and didn't know any better, I thought that these were all probably our imaginations, and they were all coming from our minds, and the blood was shutting down and the brain and all this kind of stuff. Now I just don't believe that anymore. I've just had too many experiences of people seeing in the room. One woman I talk about in the book is a woman named Hannah, who, when she died, she used to love the old hymns of the church. So I'd get into the habit of going to visit her in the hospital. I'd take my guitar with me, and I would sing the old Rugged Cross, or I'd sing In the Garden or something like that. And she used to love that. And sometimes the other nurses would push other patients in. We'd have a little choir going. But one day, the last time I saw her alive, she said to me, and this was probably 50 years ago now, she said, who did you bring with you this time? And I said, I'm just here by myself, Hannah. And she said, oh, sometimes they wait until you're gone. I think the music brings them. And well, of course, music is vibration. And so, and I said, oh, well, are they, she said, yeah, I don't know where they are, but they come through the portal. And I said, portal? Wow. Why didn't she say door? And she said, portal. 40, 50 years later, I had another experience with another woman who said the exact same thing. Who did you bring with you? They come through the portal, she said. And I'm absolutely convinced that they were seeing real entities that were coming to visit, and somehow the vibration perhaps of the music, or just my intentions, like your intentions, can bring these people through what they use the word portal. And I'm sure that what you were seeing, you weren't just imagining it. No, I'm absolutely positive these were real entities, real beings, and they will probably be there to greet you when maybe they're maybe they're your fan club, and when it comes time for you to cross over, they'll be there to make your crossing over much easier. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. It really is important.
We'll have to have a natter, because I've had 3 near-death experiences and I've met people on each occasion.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the physiological people would say it's just lack of oxygen to the brain causing you to hallucinate. But
no, I don't think so. I just not anymore. I had a good friend of mine. One day, I received a call about 3 o'clock in the morning from a nurse who said, "Your friend Bradley's in the hospital. He may not make it through the night." And Bradley was just a pillar of the community, pillar of the church, had 2 doctorates, started a university, which is still going, and he accomplished everything. And they had, if you want to look up success in the dictionary, open the dictionary to success, and there's Bradley's picture at you. When I got there, it was obviously he wasn't going to make it much longer, but Brad and I were good friends, and so I didn't have to kid around with him or anything. And I said, Brad, are you ready to go? And he started to cry. And he said, Jim, I've had a successful life. I know I've had a successful life, but there's one thing I didn't do that I should have, and I miss it. And I said, what's that? He said, I didn't prepare for this moment. Well, he made it through that night, and he made it through 10 more days. And I was visiting with him every day before he died. And at the end, I'm sure that he was much more ready to go and meet these entities. I don't know whether I taught him anything by visiting him those 10 days. I know he taught me a lot. And I think it's really important. So, boy, this is something for you to look forward to. The friends who will be there to greet you is wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So we just have a question now from Jim Webb, please. Jim.
Hi there. I'm joining from Vancouver Island on the Pacific coast of Canada.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. All over.
I'm Jim, and this is Summer.
I'm Summer.
And we're wondering, do you use body dowsing? Because we communicate with our guides all the time using body dowsing. Just you ask a question, you standing up, you swing forward for yes, and backwards for no, and it works like a dream.
Yeah.
And quite often we get word answers too.
We just eliminated the tools. We don't use the dowsing tools. We just use our body as the the dowsing tool. And it's brilliant. We've been communicating with our guides for some time now and established a very strong relationship with them. And yes, we get yes and no answers. You're right. You have to word them very carefully as to what you want to what you're trying to find out. There's a particular way that you loosen your body. Probably you do this with dowsing tools too. I don't know. Jim's a dowser with tools as well, but I'm not. But there's a way you loosen your body and you center yourself sort of in your pelvic area. And I close my eyes to do this, and your body just becomes, what you have to do, you're right, is you have to not have an expectation of the answer. You have to, because if you do, that's going to interfere with this process. So you have to somehow just slightly blank yourself out, let your body relax. And I mean, it's so automatic to us now. We do it all the time.
That's a level.
So the tools
you've achieved a level of sophistication that I hope someday I will get to. That's wonderful.
Try it with your body.
Yeah, you start off by asking yourself. You stand up, you rock backwards and forwards a few times. You ask yourself questions. I'd say, is my name Jim? Forward. Is my name Eric? Back. And you keep on doing that. Then you can start asking questions.
I'm going to look into this. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
It works on material things. I can ask the post box, is there anything in you? Yes or no. If I check it, it's right.
Oh,
the other thing,
wonderful.
I can talk to the spade. Did my grandfather buy you? Yes. When? 1899.
Wow, that's wonderful.
And also talk to plants. This is one thing we've learned for sure. We have not yet met a plant that doesn't have something to say. Okay, you can have a row of plants. Some are, you don't know if they need watering or not. You have a whole row of the same kind of plants. I'll say, are there any of you there that need watering? Yes. Okay. Is it you? No. Is it you? Yes. Is it you? No. Now you go and stick your finger in that pot and you'll find it's 100% accurate. They'll tell you what fertilizers they'd like to have. We do things with copper wires and electroculture. And, one tree we have out here that was severely damaged, and it told me exactly how it wanted its copper wires placed, wrapped around it, and how it wanted to be treated in order to revive itself. And now this is a huge flourishing tree because it told me I can go down there now and ask it, do you like, are your copper wires on right? It told me a couple of weeks ago that one of the wires was too tight. I found the tight wire and I loosened it. Now it says it's okay. So you can communicate with basically all of nature, but guides, absolutely. We have come to learn to know our guides now over the amount of time that we've been doing this. And we can ask simple things too, like, do I need more vitamin C, or when we go shopping for supplements, we'll say, is this brand better or is this brand better? Whatever. We can find out all that kind of information about what our bodies need and how to take care of our bodies as well. But certainly the higher things, and yes, you get a yes, no answer from your guide, but you know what? You can say, will you send me more information about this? Yes. I turn on my computer, I look, and somebody just sent me something in my inbox, and there it is. It's like, or you're looking at something like your stuff on YouTube, and over on the right-hand side, the top one is, oh, well, that was a question I had. So that's when you put out that you want, it's not just a yes, no thing. And we get the bobbing thing like you do too. It's like, well, kind of. And that's what my guide told me about your pyramid. That's exactly what my guide said. Sort of,
Oh, that's great.
Exactly.
What a wonderful story.
Just being limited to your tools, you can.
It's amazing what you can do.
It's amazing.
Yeah. When friends come over to the house and I'm introducing them to dowsing, I love to go to a tree, for instance, and douse the aura of this tree, and then go have the friend stay there and actually hug the tree and talk to it and let it know that it's loved. And then I douse the aura of that tree, and sometimes it's 15, 20 feet farther out. It's just expanded so much. So what you're doing is so much more sophisticated than that. I just love it. I love it.
Well,
what a wonderful story.
Douse the person who hugged the tree, and you'll find that theirs is also, because the tree is loving back.
I do that. I do that as well. That's right. Oh, that's great. That's great.
Try all the dowsing.
Anyway, we'll email you at your website. We can talk more.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Because everybody else should try it too. Everybody else should try to just try using your body. If you're familiar with dowsing tools, that feeling where you let go and you let your body kind of just direct. Just use your body.
Yeah. Anyway,
Okay.
this is wonderful stuff, and thank you so much
Yeah.
for putting this on. Will there be a replay?
Yes.
Is the replay available?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, there will be. It'll be on the YouTube channel at some point in the near future. Yeah.
Thank you so
Okay.
So
much.
this is all stuff people need to learn. We're moving into an amazing new world now, a frequency, vibration, energy, and exactly what you're saying is what so many people need to be understanding now.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that. The confirmation
Much
is
gratitude.
wonderful. Well,
Can we move to Jill Dearlove, please? She's got her hand up, please. Thank you, Jill.
I just want to say this has been absolutely fantastic. I feel so emotional, but I just want to come back to Jim and his lovely partner. 45 years ago, an electronics engineer taught me how to dowse, and it saved my son's life. He was wildly allergic, and he taught me how to dowse for the right foods. But I had something very, I call it magical. It was witnessed. I was with a chiropractor down in Dorking, and I said, oh, there's a strong smell of leather. I think it's suede. I can feel suede. It's really lovely and soft. So she said, and she was behind me working on my neck, and a tear dropped from her face onto my face. And she said, what else can you feel? And I said, I think it's a red Indian. It's a magnificent headdress. Well, when you hear people talk about it, it's always Cleopatra or somebody famous. So she said, oh, that's my guide. He's teaching me. Wow. I said, well, actually, you're teaching him because he's come into my throat and he's looking at the work you're doing on my back of my neck. And because it was witnessed, it was so profound. I've had lots of experiences myself from age 3 upwards. All of this is normal to me, but hearing you talk, Jim, is wonderful. Well, you've given me words that I can explain to people what this is about, including 2 professors I work with. I ain't going to shut up now.
What a wonderful thing it is to have a community like we have and to be able to share these so many miles apart, the Pacific coast to the UK to here in South Carolina and all over. Oh, what a wonderful
it's a privilege. It's a huge
invigorating privilege. Yeah, it is. Thank you for bringing it together, Nick. I appreciate it.
Well, don't forget on the Saturday we've got the International Dowsing Day, which is like an all-day drop-in session for anybody who's interested. Just drop in for a chat. You can turn your camera off and just listen to the chat, or participate as you wish. So that's going to go on rather heroically. Be hosted by Richard from 9 o'clock in the morning till probably midnight on Saturday, this coming Saturday. So should be interesting, I think. It's normally quite good, and we'll record that as well. So yeah, I think one of the biggest, most interesting points of all this, Jim, is why are we physical creatures? Why are we embodied? That seems to be the biggest mystery, really.
Yeah, I've thought about it. The best I can come up with is it is probably the best possible way to establish individuality, which we need to have the experiences that we do. And I'm sure that any words I could give it are going to be inadequate. And when we get there, I've often thought when we cross over and get to the other side, I've done this in out-of-body experiences. A lot of times I've been over there and I haven't wanted to come back, but I knew I've had to. But I've got a sneaking suspicion when we cross over for good and we get to the other side, our first words are going to be, "Ah, I knew it."
Yeah. And we've got Martin, please. If you could unmute yourself, Martin. Oh,
can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you now. Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim. That was a wonderful talk. Just one thing I'd like to add of my own experience. You talked about dowsing and then as much as possible verifying the answer. Now, many people like the idea of asking, is this the truth? but I would advise everyone not to do that, because the truth is personal anyway, so it's just self-satisfying. I use fact. So if I get an answer, I'll say, is this a fact? Mm-hmm. And for a moment, I won't get an answer while Spirit's checking the fact. And it'll come back and it'll say yes or no, quite independently of the first answer. It won't always get, so if I've got it wrong, the fact question usually tells me it's wrong. So I verify all my answers by simply saying, is that a fact?
That's a great tool.
Just share that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that, Martin. That's a good tool to have in the arsenal. It really is.
You're welcome. Anyway, thanks for the talk. It's been brilliant.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, we don't seem to have any more questions. I think we better call it a night there, I think. And I know you've had a busy day so far, so you probably need a cup of coffee now and put your feet up for a little while. So it just remains to say thank you very much for giving us a wonderful talk. Well,
thank you, and I thank you for having me. Really have appreciated it. And to all of you who we've had a chance to meet, you're all doing just wonderful work, and it's so much of an honor to belong to a community such as this. Thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you everybody. Thank you for coming, and we'll have another talk next month, the third Thursday of next month. So see you all then, hopefully.